Hey, Captain. What kind
Hey,
of funny hat? You're gonna
it's
mix master. What is that?
it's like what's it called? I think it's called a pith helmet. It's like a tropical thing. It's a little too small.
Oh,
Uh,
oh yeah, right. I thought you had a mix master on your head.
oh, what's a mix master?
A blender, for smoothies.
Oh, it makes smoothies too
Yeah,
while you wait.
that's right. It'll whip up something cool in your brain.
Oh yeah, you never know what comes out.
For
Yeah,
that
well, I
model,
might
the
just go
colors on the
back to.
inside.
Yeah.
You're ready for adventures. I was just watching Total Recall. It looks like you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready for Total Recall. Yeah, I think it's time to watch that again too.
Yeah, it was good. I fell asleep, but I'm going to wake up and watch it again.
Well, are you sure you're not on Mars or something?
Yes, it could be that. Could be that.
Yeah.
Morning coffee sounds about right. How is everybody?
We're good, I think. To me, it's late afternoon. I'm having some afternoon tea. Other people on the tea team and the water team.
Yeah, tea is good. Tea is good.
Yeah.
I've been drinking my coconut drinks. I love them. I don't know if you know these. It's an adventure in new flavors
Antioxidant cocoa fusion. That
with
sounds
lime,
with
cocoa
lime.
fusion with lime. Yeah.
That sounds
So
good.
it's good. I ordered by the case. I like it that much.
Well,
Case.
gotta
Quesadilla.
gotta try that sometime.
Yeah, they have a whole bunch of flavors, but that's the only one that I've tried and I liked it, so I'm rolling with it.
Mm.
Life is an adventure. You have to take risks. Who are the risk takers behind this camera lens? Raise your hands. Let's see.
Yeah.
Nobody else? Anybody else?
Hey,
Couple
we're here.
All right.
So
Yeah.
what is it, an adventure? To me, that sort of as a metaphor, it speaks very well. I mean, I feel I live my life as an adventure, even when it's sort of normal things. I like to discover new things and pretend there's sort of a mystery in it that I'm unraveling a quest of some kind. So I feel driven by a little bit of mystery and exploration, and I don't know where it's going. That makes me excited, and that leads me to new things all the time. So to me, that's like just a cool way of addressing anything.
Well, isn't life the master adventure? I mean, here we are.
Yeah, it is, but I'm not sure everybody sees it.
Well,
So I,
how else? How else could you possibly see it? It's a mystery, right? You don't know the ending. You barely remember the beginning. I mean, you're in the womb somewhere. But now, you're heading towards death, inevitably. And what do you do in between? You have adventures. What else is there?
yeah, but I mean, some people see it as well. It's just you die. So I mean, it's all for nothing anyway. I mean, whatever you do, it ends up being washed away anyway. So it makes no real difference, and you just do the same as everybody else, and then you die.
Yeah, some people, that's their life. My
Yeah.
friend Michael is like that. He says, yeah, you pay taxes and you get laid and then you die or something like that. I don't know. I've done things that have left an imprint. I don't know if they've made a big difference, but they've made some of difference. I get letters, feeding back. Thank you for doing what you did. I
Hmm.
treasure those because it means that my life has meant something to somebody.
Hmm.
And that's the best adventure there can be if you can make it better for somebody. Why else are we here?
Yeah, I like that too. So I feel also I'm here to some degree to leave a mark, but it doesn't have to be a big mark. It can just be sort of the experience you're having along the way and the little interactions with other people. But I certainly like hearing from others that I made a difference or that something somehow triggered something for them.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is great, man, because I woke up in great pain this morning. I'm in bed still. I don't even want to get out of bed. But I popped a bunch of pain pills, so I'm ready for today's adventure. It's coming into focus, and I thank you for joining this group or having the group or whatever, so that I'm not so alone, because I'm too alone for words. I have no partner. I see you're partnered over there.
Well, we're here, and Heidi transformed into Heidi and Mark.
I asked him to come because he certainly has some adventure. He came.
Well, let me tell them.
Okay. Well, he can tell adventures. He doesn't have a hat, but he does have adventures.
Yeah.
You don't have a hat.
I have several hats.
And it's okay. You don't need a hat to participate.
Right. That's right. So, well, I think probably my biggest adventure in the last decade or so is to, with just a couple months of knowing this woman, I came from my retirement village in Florida to join her in Italy. I was 70 years old at the time. She seemed like just a sweet young thing then. I know better now. But that was, I tend to do big things like that, and then I get real cautious on the little things, like what pants to put on, or
your hair, is the hair right?
Oh my God, is my hair okay for public view? You know, it's really that way. I mean, back in when I was as an undergraduate, finishing my undergraduate studies, I had to for teaching, I had to do practice teaching, which involved driving to a nearby city to high school. And for that, I finally needed a car. And it was a 1953 Chevrolet. And it was my first car. And in 2 months, I'd given up practice teaching. I had run off with my girlfriend to as far away as I could go at the time, which was the Pacific Ocean, and set up housekeeping there, and got married by number at the Los Angeles County Courthouse. Couple number 38, step right up, step right up. Okay. How many rings? No rings. Oh, no rings. Oh, you better get them rings. Oh, you know, and that worked for 10 years. And then there was another marriage. Yeah. So
well, how did you get from Florida to Italy is what I want to know.
Oh, I flapped my wings really hard. No, the usual way, a flight from Miami to Rome.
But how did you meet? Did you meet electronically, or you picked her up in a cafe?
Facebook.
Facebook.
The only thing what Facebook is good for.
Facebook. Of all the dating services, never thought of Facebook as a dating service.
No, it's not a dating service.
We had a mutual friend, and we were commenting upon what the mutual friend was talking about.
But it was written, but it's something like we do here. You are writing or conversing in a group, and you get interested in each other, what the other says, and then things go on.
Yeah.
Here it's sort of easy or more difficult because you see the other person. While when it's only written, you have all these ideas how they
That's very interesting. We got talking with each other and got interested in each other before we actually saw any images of each other. So
it's an
I don't
adventure.
know if that was an adventure. Mm-hmm. I got off the airplane and
I said, "Oh gosh, he's so old."
His shoulders are all hunched up like an old man. Yeah. So those are adventures, and of course, just daring to live in Italy too is an adventure.
I went to visit Damanhur. I loved Damanhur up in northern Italy.
Yeah,
Torino.
Yeah, that's the other end of the country. Well, it's halfway.
Halfway.
Yeah, we're halfway down near Rome. Yeah. So there are a lot of interesting things to do and see here. And most of the time we're in this old house. Well, it's not old by Italian standards, but in the country with one stufa, one wood stove to heat the whole place. And it's about 2 meters from where we're sitting right now.
Oh, it's no fire.
And, there's no fire. Oh, gosh. And I just came back from the woodshed with another wheelbarrow load of wood.
I think we have taken enough space now. How many people are there?
Well, they're still there though. They must be interested.
We could have left. Yeah, no, it's good. We were intrigued
We're
by your
waiting for
story.
the juicy part of the story, Heidi.
Yeah. I'll stop now.
I like the idea that you found love at 70. It gives me hope.
Uh-huh.
You know, it was not really falling in love at the beginning. It was be having the same interests, and then slowly finding out, oh, we could go with it, and then it developed sort of. It was not the normal falling in love thing, you know.
She did make me sign a contract eventually.
Sort of. Yeah.
That's lovely. I noticed I've seen it several times where it was like people who have mainly conversed in writing, where that actually created a really strong relationship because you bonded sort of more consciously or in other ways than just how do you look and what your mannerisms are, and then you work with whatever you find when you physically meet each other, and actually, but you have a deeper relationship. So I've known several people who got, or
I find this a perfect way because it avoids all these how do you say, these errors in thinking, oh, this person looks like, and I could never, and so without even exploring, you know. While when you write and you don't even have not even a picture, then you get to know what, if there is a common interest, and if there is something we are interested in, what the other has to say, and then it's a different sort of relationship. It's not this this prickly, tickly, falling in love thing, which we know from early ages, you know. So, but it's really good. I'm so glad because I did this sexual attraction thing so often, and I went into relationships too quickly, always in the past. So that's for me the best way of exploring.
Well, we were just as quick this way.
Yeah, but differently. Different. We couldn't have gone to bed, you in Florida and I here. So the hormones were sort of quiet for quite a while. So that's good.
That's very cool. I mean, I notice how, I mean, what for some people is an adventure, for other people look like something else. Like for me, like just going somewhere new, meeting some new people, going to another country. I mean, that's very adventurous and it's a great story. Whereas for other people, it might just be, well, it's just sort of online dating and they meet each other and they live someplace with an old wood stove. I mean, what's interesting about that? I mean, you can look at it in very different ways. and like for me, I often hear like admiring feedback from me having changed countries several times, like just moving to France. A bunch of people are like, oh, I wish I could do that. It's just so courageous that you just pick up the whole family and then you go somewhere else. It's just, I wish I could do that, which is bullshit. I didn't do anything special. I didn't plan it particularly well. I just decided that maybe we should go and live in another country where we don't speak the language and figure things out when we get there. I mean, that
are you telling me then when you were in Los Angeles that you had a family there?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Haven't you met them? Well, maybe
I don't think I ever met them in LA. I always thought of you as a single guy in LA.
No, I wasn't. I always had a family all along.
Wow, hide them well, you do.
I didn't hide them particularly well, but they're like my wife is, well, she's actually more outgoing than I am, but she's less likely to be into sort of networking for changing the world kind of thing. So she's the person who like knows everybody in the neighborhood and knows what everybody's doing and what's going on. She's very practical. So in some of my events in LA, for example, I would be the guy who would get up and welcome people and say things, but she would be the one who would make sure the event actually worked and that people had something to eat and that things were well organized. And it's in part a male-female thing, but it doesn't have to be. It's more that we complement each other well, and some roles are more invisible than others. Like, for example, I remember fondly I was in LA, but one event we set up in the Bay Area and in San Francisco when I had the New Civilization Network in the late 90s. So I invited a bunch of people who were around up there, and we had a great event. And Birgit, my wife, went with me there too. And one of the things several people noticed and fondly mentioned many years later, how she took care of the environment. Like, it was a day that was very hot. And while we were busy talking about changing the world kind of thing, she would open the windows, or she put up a sprinkler outside that put down water that cooled the air. I mean, she did things that made the environment very pleasant kind of thing. And a couple of people I knew noticed that and have mentioned it several times since then, because it was sort of like it's part of creating and hosting a space. It's just a different part of making it comfortable. It's not the only part is not standing up and saying inspiring things. On the contrary,
often it is
I so admire.
not seen.
Yeah, I so admire you for that, and the fact that you have a partner to share in these productions with. That's my dream, to have an intimate other that can co-produce things for public benefit.
Yeah, well, in part, what drives it for me and my wife is that we are very different, so that we don't really agree on most things, but we work it out, and we might get at things from different angles. So it's not at all that we're on the same page, but it's rather that we're willing to go through the trouble of connecting on various things. But I was trying to give the example of just for me, an adventure is maybe just doing something without thinking too much about it. Just sort of taking a risk and changing something. To me, that's actually a quite easy way of revitalizing life. I mean, just move to another country or something without thinking about it, and you will surely have a lot of adventures, because it takes a while to figure things out. But I noticed the sort of dissonance or the other way of looking at it, that people who are used to sort of planning things for years and doing it with a great safety net, and so that who might think that I have saved up for years to move to France because I really love France and I prepared things. I didn't have much thought about that. It's just French is a nice language and seemed like a good place to move, as good as any, and the weather is a little nicer than in Copenhagen, so it seemed like a good place. But that's instant adventure, because even if it's a civilized country where people drive in cars and shop in supermarkets, lots of little things are different. So there's a lot of discovery and finding out what really makes these people tick and how do things work here. So an enormous amount of things are different, and I really enjoy that. I enjoy that adventure of just picking up something totally new or going somewhere else and then seeing what happens. But for me, it's really just in the attitude. What makes it an adventure is that you're willing to do that, and that you actually enjoy all the little things that don't work right away, but you work at it and figure out, well, why didn't this work? Well, because they think a little bit differently here. What I said didn't mean what I thought it meant, so I have something to learn.
All is quiet.
That's sometimes a good thing.
You must know that I said to Mark that he should leave some space for somebody else because he was ready to jump in, and I did my micromanaging thing here.
No, it's okay. It was perfect.
I'm having an adventure with my 3D printer.
I'm a little jealous because actually I have a 3D printer, but I never finished assembling it, which is a little embarrassing because it's totally up my alley to have a 3D printer and be into stuff like that. But it's also a do-it-yourself project to assemble it, so it's still like 3/4 done, standing in a box in the corner of my office. So I haven't quite gotten to the last part of it.
Well, if you ever want a mentor, I'm glad to Zoom with you about it.
What are you printing there? Coffee pot?
Oh, here's my latest thing. Let's see if I can figure out how to flip the camera. How do you flip the camera in Zoom?
I don't know. You're on a phone, or what are you on? Oh,
I'm on my iPhone, yeah. I can't figure it out, so I'll just make believe you can see this.
Yeah, we can see this.
So here's two things. This is my video projector, and here is the cover for the video projector that fits over the lens. So I made a disc over here out of 3D printed plastic that I stuck onto to keep the lens cap from getting away. So that's where I keep the lens cap. Now here's my Apple TV that's connected to the projector. And it usually just lies around somewhere on the desk, somewhere just that I can get to it. But I decided to print this 3D stand so I could aim it right at me and control it remotely, which is what an Apple TV is. You get different content with a thin little controller. I can't find it at the moment. And then I built this. I printed this. This is my phone holder. When I don't want to hold this cell phone here, I put it in this holder. It's the same thing as this Apple TV holder, except it's thinner. These little grooves are thinner. And then I coated the bottom with this glue that gives it a kind of a tacky feel. It's not sticky, but it's grippy. It's grippy. So this plastic doesn't slide around. I've coated the bottom with this glue that's really great for stuff like that. In fact, let me show you the glue, because it's better to be used for other things than glue. I'm going to actually get out of bed for this call here. Let's show you the glue. Okay, we're in my work area now. I can't see you because I don't know how to flip the camera, but this is the glue right here. Can you see it?
Yeah, Gus, what is it called?
It's a Loctite, Loctite, GO2, go-to glue, go-to glue. Crystal clear, extra durable, and versatile. It doesn't make a lasting stick. It's more like tacking things together that don't get a lot of torque or pressure. But it makes a great rubberized coating for the bottom of things. And the other way I use it is on my guitar cases. These are soft guitar cases. There's no guitars in them, but you'll see that I have stickers on them. So the stickers are outlined in this glue, which is pliable. It allows these to bend, and in fact, I've covered the stickers with the glue, and a thin layer covers both of these stickers. Whereas here, I've just outlined the sticker with the glue. But it keeps these stickers from peeling off after applying the material. So the glue is really great for bonding things to some materials. Works well for that. That was your instruction about glue for the day. Now you've got some hot tips.
That's pretty cool, Peter.
I got to pick up things, so pardon the lack of image. Okay, I picked up my guitar cases. This is frustrating. Why I can't flip this camera around? Why can't I do that? How do you make it flip?
Yeah, I don't think it has a button for it.
Anybody know?
Maybe where is
That's crazy not to have.
it? Yeah, you'll have to hack it.
Yeah, there's got to be a way.
You got to build a 3D thing where you just sort of mechanically flip it around or something
Yeah,
with
like
mirrors.
that's it. Mirrors, smoke and mirrors. You got that right. Smoke and mirrors. So here, check my workbench out.
You got a lot of stuff.
Anybody have any questions? Goop. You can't live without goop. Goop is great stuff.
Yeah.
I have a question. I bought these halogen bulbs. Does anybody have any experience with these halogen bulbs? They're 12 volts halogen, but I think you need a transformer of some sort rather than just a 12-volt battery.
You do. Well, it's we do have them in our bathroom, I think, and it's not just giving it 12 volts, it needs something to start it with or something like that. Like
a transform ballast or something?
Something like that gives it a bigger jolt to start, I think, but I'm not totally sure.
You just need the right lamp case. We have one over there, and you put it in. It is not 12 volt. It is 230.
So
normal.
So certainly it needs some kind of box. So I'm not sure a battery would do it.
Yeah, I just want a little illumination on the work area, very bright. So, but I haven't seen any lamps that carry these things. I'll have to go back to the store and ask them. What about Sugru? Anybody?
I have that too. That's pretty cool. So this little plastic thing, you can fashion a little item with your hands that hardens in a few hours. I've used that for a few things.
Have you? Here's what I used it for.
Oh, there's Heidi has a lamp like that. So that's really just the.
Oh yeah, okay. That's what I'm looking for.
So that's just plugged in. So, but that
yeah, regular plug. But in the lamp, that looks like LEDs that she's got in there.
Yeah, it does look a little like LEDs. Those there. Well, that's how.
Yeah, two prongs.
It's probably different. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like LEDs though.
Yeah.
Anyhow, what I was going to show you is over here. That's my interface. Are you seeing it?
Yeah.
It's got push buttons. Let's see. Down, up, which way? I can't see. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, so here it is. It's my USB hub. And I've got it on the side of a piece of equipment. And I made 2 balls of Sugru. And then here on this edge, I put some. And then on the other edge, I put some. And it affixes it to the edge here. Very solidly, I might add. I'm surprised. You can plug things in and out, and it won't make the Sugru loose.
So this is your technical adventure today.
Yes, technical adventure. Adventure in people. I mean, you know, I don't interact with people much, so I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're people.
You are people from everywhere. So I know you're in Paris, and where are you? You're in Italy, you guys. And Doug, where are you?
I'm Greater New York Metro. East Coast.
We're neighbors.
Where are you?
New Jersey. Over the George Washington Bridge, Tenafly.
Okay, we're not far from each other.
Yeah. What's your world about, Doug?
This.
You're a videographer.
Adventures in DIY.
Oh, I see. No kidding. Oh, kindred spirit.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much full-time committed to this kind of stuff, to figuring out how we work and play together differently, and in service to fitting ourselves into the world a little bit differently and hopefully a lot less destructively.
Well, that's my work in the world exactly. And It's through a venue and a venture where people can have adventures, educational adventures, called Creativity Cafe. And the idea is that all of the creative people, those inspired souls that think differently, see differently, want something different, could gather in these venues for the synergy effect to have greater affect on us and our society, both locally with actions we might devise together, and improve in the community that would have application in the world at large. So if all of these little conclaves of creative people were to sprout up where we know we could go to have a jam or have a philosophical discussion, or it's the middle of the night and you know that you're going to find another artist like you that can't sleep, well, that would do us a lot of good to have these venues. So my life's work is about creating these venues, although I've kind of sidestepped it now that I'm getting intimate with my 3D printer. But I might get back to it.
Careful,
Anyhow,
that's a tricky term of phrase.
yeah. Truly, but it's like giving birth. It's so much like giving birth. I have this thing in my mind that I want to create, and I go to the computer and I have a 3D program and I mock it up and then I print it out and it's too big and it's too small. But the thing is, I've got it in my hand and it went from my mind to my hand in an hour or less. And to me, it doesn't get better than that, except sex, real sex, But that's really cool to have that ability as a creative person to think of something and hold it. And a minute later, that's really amazing. It's like childbirth, closest I'll get to childbirth. What do you have to say about that?
I like that.
Well, Sophie has tried real childbirth. She might disagree.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I've never tried what you're currently doing. What is your first name, Maui?
Peter is my
Peter,
name.
sorry,
Yeah.
because I don't have the Peter and I joined very late. No, honestly, I'm unsure, physically speaking, if you do feel the same condition when you play with your 3D printer and with your brain.
It's close. It's very satisfying.
It's probably more like a metaphor.
Yeah, sure.
It's the male version. It's the male version. We know that's severely constrained compared to female versions of just about everything. We're far more limited.
And don't go through
don't
as much hell to
know. I'm not saying you are. It's very difficult to feel in each other's bodies.
Well, there's an African tribe somewhere where they actually split the work, so that when the woman gives birth or when she's preparing for birth, it would be the men who would like to have all the pain. So they've agreed that the man he's complaining and he's suffering, and so when she's giving birth, he's like, it's really hard, and he's preparing for that like months in advance. And the women actually end up having quite a smooth, pleasant, pleasurable childbirth where the guy is all in pain and having a horrible time. So they just agreed that it works that way, and apparently it's possible. So the guy somehow learns to take on the trouble of childbirth, and they split the work like that. I mean, it's still work for her, but it's the more pleasant part of actually giving birth to the child, not the painful ripping your body apart part. So I'm not sure if I would recommend that or if I want to do it, but I think it's a good attempt to try to understand each other.
There was actually a YouTube, I think a year or two ago, where a couple of guys were wired up with electrically generated contractions, identical, similar to a woman's, and they were put through literal childbirth and delivery over hours, and they were just crying within 15 minutes. It was really telling.
Yeah, I read somewhere the other day there's some measure for how much pain one has in the body, and then a normal human can handle up to the rating 40 or something like that, but childbirth is like 55. So technically speaking, shouldn't be possible to bear it. But I mean, there are other factors that makes the pleasurable part of giving birth that somehow makes it possible to deal with the actual painful part. So, but if you just get the pain of it, it's like you just can't. It's hard.
So I'm curious, have you folks heard or followed the explorations into the idea of grounding or earthing people in service to health?
Like just as walking on the ground,
Walking
kind of
barefoot, but also it's literally the idea of grounding your body as a path to healing.
I know an exercise where you can several exercises of groundings. So, yeah, and I know a person who is walking with shoes which have all five
toes separate.
5 toes and no sole practically. So he is barefoot with shoes on. Let's say, yeah.
Yeah, I recently saw a video, and it was really, really, really. It actually like got me, and it basically, the premise is that the beginning of the sort of health failure in civilized Western societies maps to the invention of the sneaker. And that basically today we're insulated from the earth all the time. And our shoes basically prevent us grounding. And the thesis and the body of research that's evolved says that our body's normal processes of white blood cells and fighting infection and dis-ease, that at the most sort of micro level is about electrical processes, and that those electrical processes generate byproducts that, if there is no way for the body to ground and dissipate electrons, it maps to inflammation, and that's actually the source of a lot of our disease. And in these research, in the research that was done, and there's a lot of it actually, I had no idea about any of this, but that people that are grounded, literally it immediately turns off the inflammation and enables healing processes to happen, and with some pretty amazing and dramatic effects. And I was motivated enough by this. Is sort of was new information for me, but I was motivated enough to go, I'm going to figure out how to, I don't know whether Peter's still with us or we lost him, but I'm going to figure out how to ground me to a radiator, assuming that would ground me, and see what happens, because I'm really curious. And my wife is full of aches and pains, and if it would relieve her stuff, that would be huge. So anyway, I was just curious whether anybody else had crossed paths with this work.
Sounds like you need a walk in Central Park.
Barefoot. The key
Barefoot.
the key is barefoot. Yeah, but
really, it reminds me of Stranger in a Strange Land. Has anybody read that book?
Oh yeah.
Stranger in a Strange Land. In one of the characters has a home that has a plot of grass in it for just that reason in their living room, so that they could be more grounded. So instead of a carpet in the living room, they have a plot of grass that they maintain.
So yeah, I haven't taken time to particularly study it. I've run into people who particularly work on that, and I'm myself looking for ways of like dealing with like stuff like inflammation. I've also run into that most of our ailments is inflammation. Like I notice myself, suddenly my knee hurts or some other part, and then most of what's little aches and pains is some kind of inflammation thing. What I've explored is cold water, which is one, well, in a way that connects with not the earth, but it does connect you with the elements in certainly one way. And I have my ups and downs with that, but it's cold water is another way of fixing up the immune system and also reducing inflammation, which
A lot of people move to Maui so that they could be in the water on Maui, which is very healing, both from the mineral aspect, but just the buoyancy to take away the pressures of gravity does very, very well for a lot of ailments.
Well, I can certainly imagine in general being more physically connected with the elements when we're in so many ways isolated from it. I mean, of course, we are walking on the ground and we are breathing air and drinking water, so it's not that distant, but energetically we're distant from it. We don't connect, we don't really appreciate that whole circuit of elements. So I can imagine, just as, I mean, we could say it's even just psychologically or energetically, that you change the way you relate to it. So, and that potentially might be more it than necessarily that the grass does something for your feet. I'm not sure, but I certainly believe in that even symbolic actions make a huge difference. So just symbolically that you're aware of walking on and connecting with the ground, whether it's on astroturf made of plastic or it's real grass that grows in the ground, both could work if you make it sacred enough just by the way you interact with it. So I believe in that. It might be better if it's the real thing, but it's more a mindset or a space we enter, I would guess.
Well, I think that given grass is alive and the molecules are moving, the atoms are moving in a way that's vibrationally alive compared to a rock, then when you're walking on the grass, your molecules on the bottom of your feet are mingling with the molecules of the grass. And there's a sort of exchange of life force that takes place more than walking on dirt or ground or whatever.
This was literally, suggesting that the act of grounding electrically enabled electrons associated with byproducts of white blood cell activity that they're electrically charged, and that literally when you ground yourself, you're literally shedding electrons that are destructive of healing processes. So it's literally like releasing the charge, the electrical charge underlying the inflammatory processes, and grounding them out so they stop. It was literally on that sort of concrete a basis. I threw a link into the chat I'm hoping it resolves to the video that that sort of explained all of this, so you folks can check it out. But
well, if that's the case, yeah, then you could do with touching the radiator. So then you could have a little sort of armband that was connected with the radiator, which normally is well grounded.
Like a computer grounding cable, just ground myself at night around my ankle and see what happens.
That could be. It's worth experimenting with.
Yeah, I'm curious.
In that case, you need a little sort of 3D printed clever thing, or
yeah,
you need to be wired.
I found out how to reverse the images.
How did you do it?
You pull down on your image. You double tap or single tap on your image, and a little window appears with share content. It has the camera.
Yes, figured it out.
Tap.
Oh,
Double tap.
You're such a hacker, Peter. You figure everything out. That's cool.
And 3D printer once I figure out how to do what I just told you to do.
Yep.
Let's see. Double tap. There it is. Okay, so here I'm at my printer station.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
What
Been modified somewhat.
What 3D printer do you have? What?
It's a Prusa i3. I built it myself. Took 2 days with guidance from the local makerspace. Here's what they call the hot end.
Yeah.
That needs a new fan. It's making noise now when I turn it on, but here's my Heartwave mandala. Here's my logo down here, my logo. And here's something I'm proud of, my Sea of Hearts. Let me see if I can show you. Sea of Hearts with the earth in it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I have fun with my 3D printer.
Yeah. I don't want to forget the energy transfer we were talking about. I'm struck the common theme here of connecting with nature and how modern life has been a quest to isolate ourselves from nature, to be protected against the ground, to have wonderful shoes, that can go over any terrain and you'll never feel anything, and to have houses that are insulated from outside weather completely, clothing, that it does wonderfully miraculous isolation tricks to keep us in this illusion of being completely contained and within ourselves, not connected with the universe, with the world, or even with just our neighborhood, So maybe it's time, that this modernism, and a reaction against this modernism brings us back to some kind of integration with our world again. But in a new way, not in the old way where we were barefoot chasing antelopes. Yeah. But in a new way.
There's a friend of mine who's one of the fathers in the field of bioacoustics and recording natural ecosystems. And he has a turn of phrase. He says that we suffer from nature deficit disorder. And,
I like it.
And his belief is that in order for us to be healthy and sort of cognitively sane, grounded, rational, and okay, that we need refreshed and present connection to the natural world. And our culture and civilization, as it's evolved, has gotten so far away from that that literally human beings are now generationally deprived, and that in fact that maps to almost a collective insanity. And I agree with that because so much of what's staring us back in the face when we wake up in the morning is completely insane. Right?
Yeah, and if we could respect nature, we would never do what we are doing. Never.
Well, and respect it's sort of do unto others as you would do unto yourself. It's sort of love us, love the world. And if you're that antagonistically destructive of the world around you, you're ultimately doing that to yourself. It's a reflection of an internal dis-ease.
And there is the question, as we have both parts in us, the good part, let's say, and the constructive and the destructive part, it is to question how far we allow ourselves to live the destructive part, which we don't recognize in ourselves. If we could recognize that, then we could stop it. Mm-hmm. But as we pretend that it's not there, it is playing out in reality, let's say, outside of us. And I'm really an advocate for getting to know your destructive part, your evil part, to be able to dominate it. Otherwise, it just comes out.
Yes, it does.
That could be really unpacked. To my mind, there's a lot of stuff in that. You know, I think that in terms of our how we grow and how we learn about the world, that you know, 90% of it is uneventful, but like 10% when we're really small, really young, is a real kick in the head. And that writes a program that sort of like, you know, gets embedded in our operating system, and then has this tendency to have us put together some fears and beliefs and things that end up informing our choices going down the road, and we recreate over and over and over again the thing that led us to come to the conclusions and fears we came to as an affirmation exercise. And we have no idea that program's running. And
I think this is part of it, what you're saying, but the other part is just human nature and independent from education. We have these parts in us independent from education. And so
I think that would be, well, it's part of the process of sorting that out. Like, my belief is well, what we call bad or evil would tend to be, well, ignorance, or that you're not really dealing with it, or it's not connected, it's not wired up. Like, once you know what's there and you face it and you're present, then most everybody will do what works, the good things. So the things we do that are bad is we're not really seeing it, we're not in touch with it, we think it's something else, we've misunderstood, we're lazy, we don't really connect. So but to me that's good news, that if we work through it, if we take the time to get to learn other people and the environment we're in, and then we will naturally do the right thing. That gives me some hope, that to observe that it's not that we ultimately are evil. Ultimately we would like to do the right thing, we're just a little stupid, and but we're trying to work it out.
you're right, you and we are coming together, but this is a choice, and there are people who choose differently.
Yeah, so there's some choices to make. It still, I believe it still applies to them, but they might not be making the choice, or they might not be aware they have the choice. And so there are sort of layers of work to do to get to realize that, which is,
you know,
hard.
maybe I can throw it in. It's at the end of that. Why I say that, we have come to, I have studied a book. There is a forensic study, a book like this. I have it over there. You can show it, about what really has happened at 9/11, or what not has happened. And this is a completely scientific study. And when you see that the amount of evil which is in those people who have done it, not the Arabs for sure, but when you come to realize the amount of evil which is present in the world and which is guiding the world, then sometimes I think we are at the losing point trying to get out the positive part. You know,
well, that's the thing. There's not enough avenues. There's not enough avenues and channels for the positive stuff that is happening, because people tend to gravitate on negative news. That's why the news is always about death and death scores. But there needs to be a good news network, and this has been a discussion for years and years, and people have attempted to start it. But again, that is the plight that we're in, that the positive stuff is not getting the airtime, quote unquote airtime, for people that are doing positive things, as all the negativity. So why don't we have venues, collective places in each neighborhood where those of us who are doing positive things can advertise, broadcast, collaborate, infuse, educate, entertain, and in some way up-level the local members of our community so that we no longer feel like it's all about negative shit happening all the time. We need a very visible, positive force locally in each community. That's the only way I could see to get out of that negative mental spiral that we've been conditioned to believe is truth, but nothing could be further from the truth.
The thing is that psychological studies show that I think 10 to 1 is the relationship between negative. You need to have 10 positive things to counterpart one negative thing. So it sometimes feels that we are on a impossible journey, at least to me. That doesn't mean that we should give it up, not at all, but it seems like really...
I think we'll figure it out, but it's heavy. But part of what gives me hope about it is that it seems to me like the majority of people would want the positive stuff and would think, yes, that's a good idea. We need more positive, constructive news. We need to hear about the things that work. Whereas the few people that want the negative stuff, it's a very, very small percentage. And I do grant that as part of humanity, there's a small number of people, small percentage of people that are sociopaths, that given the choice, they will do the evil thing. I think there's still hope for them, but not just by talking about it or suggesting it. They would still stab you in the back. But I think that's maybe 1% of humanity or so, which means there are 99 people who, given the choice and a little discussion about it, would want the good thing, and a few people who wouldn't. So part of the challenge is how to organize society so that we keep so that we can keep those 1% from messing things up for the rest of us, and because they will work full time on manipulating everybody else into getting what they want. And our society, unfortunately, makes it relatively easy for them to be in flow and to do their thing because they're not limited by issues of morality and many other things that hold the rest of us back. So we need to change something there. But what gives me hope is that the rest of us can relatively easily end up agreeing that, well, something needs to change here. And I do think it might in part come from little things like we do here, of looking at what we can do. We don't have an answer necessarily, but it might just grow from the seed of us looking at it and being present and dealing with it. And what each of us are doing, the little adventures, Peter making weird rainbow-colored gizmos.
This is my color puck.
Oh,
this is my meditation device. I when I'm frustrated or uncentered, I look at this and I get back on track.
Okay, so like as Gretzky said, I mean, we need to skate to where the puck will be, not to where it is.
Good luck with your puck.
Puck you, yeah, that's good. Okay.
It was interesting you mentioned the 1% and the 99%, which of course is a metaphor for the economic power of the world at the present time.
And all the rich elite are not all bad people by far, but a bunch of them are. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily correspond, but it's a similar percentage.
I actually hold a vision and believe that us being here is an emergence that's being replicated in thousands of places and ways all over the world. And that we're in the shoot, we're in the transformation, birthing of a new world. And notwithstanding media and the Western cultural, attraction to Schadenfreude, right? To horrible things, it's actually happening now, and that it's a phenomena of bottom up. It's a phenomena of grassroots, and ones and twos and sixes aggregating and aligning organically and emergently. And in the scheme of that, what it really comes down to is sort of the core values on the good end. And I agree, Fleming, with you that I think most people, given the opportunity and the circumstance, will choose for the good, for the kind, for the collective, and that ultimately it's all of us or none of us. So you can't carve out or accept or ignore that 1%. You can't ignore the outliers. I used to, as recently as a month and a half ago, sort of carve out this idea that, everything I believe applies except to sociopaths. But the truth of the matter is that except isn't really true or valid, that even in connection with the sociopaths, there's a collective, common-centered interest in all of us to figure out how to take care of them as well and include them as well, even if it involves figuring out how to make sure that intentionally or inadvertently they don't do harm or damage or destruction of others. And so, the question becomes sort of turning the binoculars around and going, instead of looking at the evil in a small, powerful, destructive minority, instead of looking at them through the lens of evil incarnate, looking at the 19-year-old strapping a vest on somewhere in the Middle East as the one who's screaming loudest and last from a place of fear. Because ultimately it all originates either from love or fear. Like, those are the only two source mediums for everything man creates and generates in the world.
And I want to add something here, because you say for the good. Everybody is for the good, and this is true. But for everybody, the good is something else. So for the sociopath, the good is something completely different than for us. And I think there is the problem. And you said not to go to the evil for 1% of sociopaths. First, I think there are more of them. And then we have a sociopath in everybody of us. And I think we first have to deal with our own inner unconscious sociopath and get really aware of that but alongside that we do things. Because we have this idea that's the others who are crazy. But we have a lot of crazy voices in us. And that we don't know, for instance, in Hitler times, how would we have behaved? Do you know that? We don't know. And so we might have been a guard in the camp too. You don't know. Now you say, no, I would never do that. But we really don't know. And I think the way to really heal the world is that everybody does the task to find out this sociopath in themselves and not project it to the 1% or 10% or how much they are. They are for sure have a little bit more percentage of sociopathy than we normal people, but we have that too. And I think this is where we need to deal with first. So that's my credo.
I actually had a practice suggested to me that I imagine myself being a guard at Auschwitz and doing all those horrible things.
See how it feels in the body.
I could imagine that. That was the surprise to me. I could imagine doing that. All those horrible things.
I think it's an excellent exercise. I mean, yeah, there are different types of people, but just by making them, that doesn't help all that much. By finding it in yourself, you might actually be more likely to come up with a way of crossing that boundary of finding something that could potentially work for all of us.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say, that we don't have to go too much out in our ideas, but take and see. Good, thank you.
Yeah, so we can get part of the answer right here just by accessing our own thing. And yes, I agree. Any of us could be under certain conditions a guard in Auschwitz just because that's sort of what was happening. That was the world at the time, and you can make lots of justifications for why it wasn't that bad. It was just work. I didn't really do anything. I just like did the accounting or something. Well, there are many ways of not really connecting with the world, and it's very healthy to examine that, even the unpleasant stuff. So I agree with that. We should start ending off in a moment. Now it's getting really heavy, but well, whatever. That's the adventure. So how has our adventure worked here, and where do you think it's going?
I think the adventure was oscillating between lullaby and very routine things for each of us, and simple descriptions and very concrete description into heavy stuff like just a few seconds ago. So it's interesting that any simple story or description of a daily activity can end up in something a lot more comprehensive and questioning the world and what we are able to do and what we do very badly. So I enjoyed the oscillation.
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge Peter for bringing like the immediate, tangible DIY thing to the party. Because yeah, I think it was part of that. And it was, it I don't know, it adds a dimension of fun and I guess escape, because if you're talking about, you know, a multicolored hockey puck, it's, you know, you're not thinking about the bigger issues of the end of the world and how do we save it.
It's about balance, you know, it's like
Yeah.
a meditation. So for me, I can be thinking of all sorts of ways to end the horror story that is our world, and at times in places, a lot of hungry people, a lot of homeless people. But I also need some relief from, you know, considering what I might do to make a difference. And that's where the balance comes in, and that's where the hockey pucks and giving birth to these little objects of art come in. It's like, you know, well, if I had a partner, I'd be communing with my partner and being a greater part of nature. But I'm a solitary soul, so I have to do what I can to keep my sanity. And if looking at a colored puck helps, well, God bless it.
Yeah, I think it's all of it. I mean, it's both the very the close, what do we actually do right now? It's the big issues, it's the hard ones, the evil in the world. It's combined with the fun and our personal path and difficulties and what we're discovering and exploring. I mean, I think all of it ties together. So we make a mistake if we split it up too much. If we think, well, this is just to enjoy myself and escape from the world. No, I mean, probably some of the things Peter is doing there, that's actually working on things that could be solutions. Why are we not all like inventing new little things that somehow might make a difference? So it all ties together. It's our stories from the past, from the present, our struggles right now. It's the big picture. It's the stuff that makes us feel sad that we don't know what to deal with, and it's stuff that makes us happy on a daily basis. So all of that makes an adventure. I mean, an adventure is not sort of clean and worked out. I mean, there are difficult parts. There are parts you don't know if you figure it out, but you go on anyway, and you find little bits and pieces you can bring with you to maybe that will be part of the puzzle later on. So Peter gave us a bunch of little things that maybe they're part of the puzzle that you need a little later in the adventure. You happen to need pulsing rainbow hockey puck for solving a mystery. I don't know. Yeah, I enjoyed that too. This was sort of chaotic in a way, but in a nice way, it sort of wove together some different things.
I'm always glad that you do this, Fleming, but I'm wondering, it's always such a small group. I'd love to see it expand in some way. And how do you think we might engineer that? Or what is stopping it from expanding, do you think?
Well, I don't know if this specifically would work better if there were like 20 people. I don't think so. That would be more chaotic. I think this works, but I certainly personally am interested in how can we make this, scale it or connect with others doing similar things or doing more of it. I mean, this probably mostly appeals to people who are a little bit sort of hardcore into this kind of thing, whatever it is, where some people would be afraid of it or they don't know what it is or how can you do this. So I would certainly like to find ways of inviting more people to do some parts of this, whatever parts it is, the adventure, the conversation, the do-it-yourself, the authenticity, uh, that could be in different bits and pieces that might be put together, or it might be a way of sort of just creating a format like this that works for more people. I don't know, but I would love to think more about it together, and how can we make more people do this? And I do have ideas.
What about doing it from a public venue? What about, like, I used to produce these art shows where the artists would show slides on a big screen, and then people in the audience right there physically would comment on the art and the artists, and it became an educational and entertaining experience. And then See You See Me came along, and I began incorporating See You See Me and broadcasting these interactions. So what if you were to actually not do this from your home, but do it from a public space where you might invite people and see if anybody else shows up from your neighborhood? And then each of us receivers might do the same to advertise that we're going to be uh, uh, breaking the barriers to peace through a cyber bridge experience that you're welcome to attend, and publish it at the library, maybe.
Something like that. I mean, there's some difficulties in like even saying, well, what is this? I mean, how do you invite 1,000 people to this when we can't really say what? I mean, is it a conversation? How do we get over sort of?
Yeah, conversations that matter. That's exactly what it is.
Well, that's isn't that what TED Talk does?
We have conversations that matter.
That's what you do. Yeah, I thought it sounded a little familiar. Your conversations that matter.
That's right.
That's what Mark and Heidi are doing.
She's here.
They're doing every week conversations that matter. Yeah.
Perfect. We should originate from one of her meetings.
Well, I mean, we are doing that in various ways. It's just how can we do more connected together, or is there some other clever thing we can do that suddenly makes this interesting to hundreds of thousands of people? I can imagine that. We don't have to come up with an answer now, but we can keep poking at it.
I'm sort of dubious about the reflexive tendency to want to go to scale as an industrial imprint. Like, that's not required, and doesn't have to be invited to the party unless that's what somebody wants or is going for.
I think you're right. The problem with looking at it that way is like, well, this is working well. Let's make hundreds of thousands of people do this. But that's maybe not what they should be doing. They should be doing something else. And so a better way of looking at scale is we'd like hundreds of thousands of people should be doing something, but they probably already are. So how do we maybe help weave that together without trying to export this particular model of it? They shouldn't be doing conversational experiments. They should be doing something else. And hopefully, yes, they are. So we should think about scaling differently. You're right.
So my sort of rubber meets the road around this meme, this idea. I'm part of currently 4 or 5 different distinct communities that do this, or or groups, small groups that do this, populations that do this. And so one of the sort of things that I harbor or fantasize about making happen is getting a couple of them to come together. Like just on an experimental basis, but on a alignment of, you folks are doing this and these folks are doing this, and everybody's expressing interest in doing us better and improving our world, like as a baseline. And how would bringing these things together work? And because part of the thing of how do we do us differently? How do we learn how to be and do us differently individually and collectively in terms of communicating and talking to each other and connecting? There's a lot of power and energy in what's generated here. Like each one of us contributes to a generated field in these conversations. And to me, it's a really powerful thing. It's also a really complicated thing. Like what goes into the making of that and how is that happening? And there are certain things all of us have learned or know tacitly that we hold in common in terms of how we interact and communicate and relate to each other, in terms of listening, in terms of respect, in terms of there's just a whole range of things that are operating that were never explicitly said, but we all know and bring that make this possible. And that common understanding is different in each one of those circles. And so just the idea of combining two of them together, in my mind, is like an unbelievably complicated idea. And that's with two different groups of people that are very evolved, sophisticated, like aware people. And it's like, like I haven't done it yet because I'm still thinking about it. So, the crawl before we walk before we run, with that level of questioning and thinking going on, for me, the idea of like, we want 1,000 people, I'm like, shoot me now. I don't even want to think about that. I'm like, how do I take 4 and 6 and introduce them to each other, and what might that look like, and how would we collectively experience and emerge something from that?
Well, let's try it. I agree. That's rather complex to do, but it would make sense to try to create some cross-pollination, or what happens when we put them together. Certainly, that's an experiment in itself, so I'm cool with that. But you're right. It's hard because one has developed sort of a different idea about what is it. And that should maybe come out in the open. There's a lot of tacit agreements, and here we've tried to make some of those explicit, but still that's a dicey thing to do as well. Yeah, it would be an interesting thing to do. Listen, I need to go in an instant, so I can't keep going.
Well, thank you for the opportunity of this.
Well, thank you for being there and making it an adventure. In various dimensions. Peter's putting batteries in something. I don't know if you get to see it, but the batteries are included.
Multitasking, it's true. But I want to comment to Doug, if he's got awareness of the PST, the Poetry Science Talks in New York.
No.
Okay, I thought that might have been one of the groups.
I'll follow up with you directly, though.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, do.
We have.
I gotta go.
And I want to say thank you to Mark that he showed up today.
Thank you, Mark. It's great. You usually hide out of the. And there's Harry showing up just as we're saying goodbye. Well, it's a perfect moment, and you got great lighting. but it will probably be another time.
Okay.
Okay, see you next week.
See you, everybody. Bye.
Blessings.